My name is Lacey Carver. I'm 32 years old. 3 weeks before my sister married the man who used to be my husband, I showed up at my daughter's school and was told I was no longer authorized to take her home. Solange was already there. She was standing near the office counter in a cream blazer, holding a folder, and she was calm in a way that immediately told me this was not an accident. She said it loud enough for every person in that office to hear. She works as overnight shifts. She's in therapy. She's not well enough to be raising a child on her own. My parents had called the school that same morning to confirm it. I didn't argue. I asked the principal to pull the original registration documents from the filing cabinet behind his desk. He did. And when he flipped the emergency pickup card over and found what was clipped to the back, his face changed. He locked the office door, told everyone to stay where they were, and picked up the phone. They thought the quiet woman who worked nights would simply collect her things and leave without her child. They had no idea that the same habit that made me good at my job was the reason this story doesn't end the way my sister planned. Welcome back to Mr. Nathaniel Stories. If you believe that being the quiet one doesn't mean being the easy target, drop something in the comments and make sure you're subscribed before we go further. I used to measure my mornings by post-it notes. Every morning before I left for a 12-hour ER shift, or on the nights I came home at 7 and collapsed into bed while Cleo was still sleeping, I'd peel a square from the pad on the kitchen counter and write something small on it. A drawing of a lopsided dog. A line that said, "Today is a good day to find a worm." Sometimes just a heart and the word mum. I'd press it to the bathroom mirror where she'd find it when she brushed her teeth. That was our thing. That was how she knew I'd thought of her before anything else. Cleo is 6. She likes worms and orange juice from a glass, instead of a carton and a stuffed rabbit named Remy with one missing button eye. She is the kind of child who narrates everything she does out loud, who will stop mid-sentence to identify a cloud shape, who told me once that purple is her favorite color because it tastes like grapes. She doesn't actually think colors have tastes. She just likes saying it. I built my entire life around the shape of her days. I am an ER nurse. I work at Kingston General on a rotating schedule. 12-hour shifts, days and nights, sometimes a stretch that bleeds from one week into the next. When people hear ER nurse and single mum, they picture a woman who is barely holding on. The truth is that nursing gave me the one skill that would eventually save my daughter, and it has nothing to do with medicine. When you work emergency, you chart everything. Every intervention, every vital sign, every second a patient waits and exactly what they waited for. You write it down not because anyone will praise you for it, but because the record matters. The record is the truth. I'd been trained since my first clinical placement to document with the understanding that someone else might have to read your notes in a crisis, and they need to know what happened, who was there, and exactly when. I brought that habit home without realizing it. I saved screenshots. I kept copies of school paperwork in a folder in my closet, the way some people keep birthday cards. When Cleo's school sent home the emergency contact registration form at the start of grade 1, I filled it in with my own pen, signed it, and photographed it on my phone before I handed it back. It was not a strategy. It was just how I was wired. The unraveling started on a Tuesday evening in October 2023. I was getting ready for a night shift, half awake and running late, when Damon's phone lit up on the bathroom counter. He'd left it charging. I wasn't looking for anything. But I saw Solange's name on the screen, and I saw enough of the preview message to understand that whatever it contained had not been written by someone's sister-in-law. We had been married for 4 years. Cleo was 3. I stood in that bathroom for a long time, before I finished getting ready and went to work, because the patients on shift that night still needed me regardless of what I had just seen. Solange is 4 years older than me. Growing up, she was the one my parents introduced first, the one who gave the toast at family dinners and remembered everyone's anniversaries. I was quieter, more internal, and I think they found that harder to translate into pride. It was not a malicious thing the way they saw us. It was just arithmetic. Some people are easier to hold up. When Cleo was born, Solange came to the hospital and held her and cried. She texted me a photograph of the two of them with the caption, "My whole heart." I have never deleted that photo. I keep coming back to it trying to find the moment it stopped being true. I still can't locate it. The divorce was finalized in November 2024. I kept primary physicals custody. Damon had joint legal custody, and Cleo every other weekend. It was unremarkable on paper. In practice, it was quieter than that, because by then Damon had moved in with Solange, and my parents had already settled into a version of events that was more comfortable than the one that was accurate. My father said at some point during those months that Damon and Solange had a real home. That was the exact phrase, a real home. As if a mortgage were a character reference, and the place where I raised my daughter by myself didn't count. My mother's approach was gentler and worse. She would sit across from me with her hands around a mug and say, "Sweetheart, I only mean that Cleo needs stability. Solange isn't running on 4 hours of sleep." I had told my mother about the therapy. I had mentioned once, in a weak moment when I wanted her to be on my side, that I'd started seeing Dr. Sharma and that it was helping. I handed her that information like a gift. She stored it like a tool. She never had my records. She didn't need them. She had my honesty. I started seeing Dr. Aditi Sharma 6 months after the affair, not because I was falling apart, but because I had a daughter to raise, and I decided I was going to do it as a whole person. Therapy was not a crack in me. It was me holding myself together deliberately, with intention. I want to be clear about that. After the divorce, Solange made herself useful. That is the only accurate way to describe it. She would text asking which afternoons were hardest for me, which evenings I was most likely to need coverage. She offered more than once to collect Cleo from school if I was running late. I always said no, and she would come along on my mother's pickups. "Just to say hello," she said. "Just to be helpful." I answered her questions. I told her which weeks were hardest. I showed her, without knowing I was showing her anything, exactly where the gaps in my schedule were. Looking back, I understand now that she was not being helpful. She was learning the building. Damon and Solange announced their engagement in January 2026. The wedding was set for Saturday, the 14th of March. I told myself I could survive a March wedding. I told myself Cleo would be fine, that children are resilient, that I would drive home and be the same mother I always was. Then, in the second week of February, I got an automated email from the school board's parent portal. An unrecognized device had logged into my account. I was coming off a night shift, and I was tired, and I did what tired people do. I told myself it was a glitch. But I took a screenshot, because I always take screenshots, and I put it out of my mind. I would find that screenshot again on the worst afternoon of my life, and it would stop being a glitch. The afternoon of Thursday, the 5th of March, was supposed to be ordinary. I had slept after my shift, picked up Cleo's prescription from the pharmacy on Division Street, and arrived at the school at the usual time, 3:15. Carol at the front desk looked up when I came in and immediately reached for the phone. "Miss Carver," she said, "could you give me 1 moment? I need to get Principal Goss." The emergency pickup card was face down on the counter. When Principal Goss came out and flipped it over, my name was not on it. Solange's was. The lamination was wrong. I noticed it immediately. The finish was too clean, the corners too sharp. That card had lived on that counter for 8 months. Lamination does not stay bright at the edges after 8 months. Someone had remade it. And then Solange stepped out from beside the end of the counter, where she had been standing in a way that made me realize she had been waiting, and she said, loud and clear in a voice pitched for everyone in that office, "She works overnight shifts at the hospital. She's in therapy. She's not stable enough to be raising a child without more support." I have replayed that moment hundreds of times. I remember that I did not raise my voice. Something in me went still and very clear, the same stillness I feel in a resuscitation bay when everything is moving fast and someone needs to stay slow. Dr. Sharma had spent 18 months teaching me how to stay inside a hard feeling without running from it. That training arrived exactly when I needed it. I'd like Principal Goss to open the original registration file, I said, the one I completed when I enrolled her. He was a careful man, Principal Goss. The kind of administrator who slows down when a room speeds up. He asked Solange to wait. He asked me to wait. He pulled the folder himself from the cabinet behind the front desk, the one labeled with my daughter's full given name, and he opened it on the counter between us. Just give her the child, Solange said. This is a formality. He didn't answer her. He read. He ran his finger down the registration page, and then the emergency contact page, and then the guardianship section, and when he looked up, his careful expression had gotten more careful. The legal guardian listed at time of registration is you, he said to me. He looked at my sister. Your name is not in this file. Solange's name was nowhere in the original documents. Whatever had been done to the laminated card on that front counter had not been done to the folder in that cabinet. Someone changed the card, I said, because that is not the list I submitted. Goss picked up the laminated card and turned it over. There was a small document pouch clipped to the back, the kind that holds a secondary sheet. He opened it. Inside was not one document, but 3. The first was a change of residence form, listing Solange and Damon's address in Napanee as Cleo's new primary residence. The second was an interdistrict transfer application, Cleo's file being moved to a school 40 minutes from where we lived, in the catchment area for their neighborhood. The third was an affidavit, stamped with a notary seal, dated to take effect on the 12th of March, 2 days before the wedding. At the bottom of 2 of those pages was a signature that was supposed to be mine. I had not signed any of them. Goss set the card down. He was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice had dropped. I can't process this. I need to make some calls, and I need everyone to stay in this room. He stepped to the door and locked it, not to trap anyone, to keep what was in that room in that room. Then he asked Carol to make sure Cleo stayed in her after-school program with her group, away from the front office. Whatever was about to happen, my daughter was not going to watch the adults in her family come apart in a school hallway. I heard Carol's voice go down the corridor, easy and ordinary, and for 1 second through the narrow window in the door, I saw Cleo cross the hall in her orange fleece jacket, carrying a juice box, chatting to the girl beside her, with the absolute unconcerned energy of a child who has no idea that the people responsible for protecting her are, a few doors down, deciding who she belongs to. I held on to that image. She was fine, she did not know. That was the one outcome I would not give up. Officer Bowden arrived within 20 minutes and took my statement while my sister remade her face into something reasonable and soft. She does overnight shifts, Solange told him, gentle as anything. She's in counseling. I'm not trying to cause trouble. I only want my niece to be safe. This is a family matter that got out of hand. There it was. Everything I had handed my family in trust, laid out in front of a stranger with a notepad, and turned into a costume for me to wear. Unstable, overwhelmed, unfit. I did not perform for Officer Bowden. I answered his questions plainly and let Solange be the one who sounded rehearsed. He asked me one question that told me he understood more than my sister thought he did. Mrs. Carver, do you have your own copies of the original registration paperwork? At home, I said. I photograph everything. He wrote that down. They released Cleo to me. She came out holding a lanyard she'd made in art, a loop of yellow thread and painted wooden beads, and she tucked her hand into mine on the way to the car without any ceremony, the way she always does. Mum, she said, when we were pulling out of the parking lot, Auntie Sol said this weekend I get my very own room at her house. She said don't tell you because it's a surprise. I kept my hands level on the wheel. Did she? I said. She said I can pick the color. I thought about the affidavit dated 2 days before the wedding. I thought about the transfer application to a school 40 minutes away. I thought about a 6-year-old girl being moved, paper by paper, into a new life while her mother was at work, keeping strangers alive at 3 in the morning. If I had come one day later, if the day had shifted even slightly. That night, after Cleo was asleep, my phone started. My mother first, gentle and aimed in the wrong direction. Then an aunt. Then a cousin who sent a photo of Solange at a venue walkthrough and typed, "Please, let's not let anything ruin her day." Not one of them asked what had been clipped to the back of that card. It was easier to decide I was the problem than to consider what my sister had actually done. I sat down on the kitchen floor after the third call, and for a while I let myself doubt everything. That is the part I don't usually say out loud. When enough people you love point at you and say you're the one who overreacted, some tired part of you starts to believe them. I thought maybe I misread it. Maybe there's an explanation I'm not seeing. Maybe this is what I do, make everything harder than it needs to be. Then Marcy came. Marcy has been my closest friend since before any of this, and she came over without me asking and sat down on the floor beside me, and did not let me stay in that place. "Don't do this small," she said. "You saw what you saw. Back up everything before you say another word to any of them." And then I remembered the screenshot. The access log from the school board's parent portal was my first move. I called the school the next morning and requested it formally as the account holder. The records showed my emergency contact information had been edited from a device that wasn't mine, a phone that had never logged into my account before. At 11:47 at night. I sat with that time for a long while. Then I pulled my hospital badge records. My card had swiped me into the ER at 7:12 that evening. I had been on the floor at 11:47. I could not have made that change. I wasn't somewhere else being irresponsible. I was somewhere else being exactly the nurse and the mother they claimed I was too compromised to be. When I brought this to Officer Bowden, along with the portal log and my shift documentation, he was calm and methodical. He laid the pages out the way I had and told me which parts were mine to establish and which parts were his. "The notary seal on the affidavit," he said, "is serious. Using a fraudulent or misappropriated commissioner's seal is a criminal matter." He told me not to lay out the specifics for my sister before everything was formally documented. People who know what evidence exists have a habit of making it disappear. I found the notary whose name appeared on that seal. Evelyn Cross, a commissioner of oaths working out of a 2-person office in Belleville. I called her and explained carefully that her stamp appeared on a document I believed was forged. She was quiet for a moment. "I've never met anyone by that name," she said. "I have no record of this document, and the commission number under that stamp expired 2 years ago." She had not notarized it. Someone had copied her seal and borrowed her name, and used them both to make a lie look like the law had blessed it. She agreed without hesitation to put that in writing. I sat across from Dr. Sharma that week, and finally cracked. I hadn't cried through any of it, not at the front desk, not with Officer Bowden, not on the kitchen floor, but in that small, quiet office. She asked me a simple question. "How does it feel to have your therapy used against you?" I couldn't hold it. "They took the most deliberate thing I ever did for myself," I said, "and used it as proof that I shouldn't have my daughter." She let the silence sit. Then she said, "The fact that you kept coming here is not evidence against you. It is the record of a woman doing the hard work of staying whole for her child. Don't let anyone rename that." I have kept that sentence since. There was one more comparison I had been putting off, because I already suspected the answer. I laid the forged documents beside real ones. My signature on the affidavit was wrong in the way. Forgeries are always wrong, too careful, drawn more than written. But the residence change form had 2 signature lines. One was supposed to be mine, and mine was fake. The other was Damon's, and Damon's was real. I had signed a marriage license beside that signature and divorce papers across from it. I knew every curve of it. He had not been reluctantly pulled into this. He had signed. I sat with that for a long time. And then I made myself finish the picture because half a picture is how you lose. The wedding was the deadline. March 12th was the transfer date. 2 days before, Cleo would be on paper a child living in Napanee, enrolled in a new school, established in a new home. By the 14th, when Damon and Solange stood in front of a room full of guests, they could have pointed at a 6-year-old girl sitting in the front row and said, "Look, 2 parents, a stable home, a family." And what they would have pointed to when someone asked about me, my shifts, my therapy, my unglamorous hours, was the story they had been assembling for months. I consulted a family lawyer that same week. She was careful with me, which is what I needed. She told me not to overstate anything, not to perform outrage for an audience, and not to let the only copy of anything leave my hands. Her job was to understand the law. The police's job was to investigate. My job, she said, was smaller than I'd been treating it. Keep the record intact, protect Cleo, be the mother. That was all. My parents called a family dinner for Sunday evening, March 8th. My father left a voicemail that was a summons, dressed as an invitation. Come to dinner. Sign a statement saying you're withdrawing the complaint. Let Solange have her wedding week in peace. We can all move forward. They believed I would come and kneel. I said I would come. Marcy thought I should expose everything publicly, post the notary seal, post the documents, post Damon's signature beside mine, let the whole world see exactly who my sister was. She wasn't wrong that Solange had earned it, but I kept thinking about what a fire like that actually consumes. My daughter would one day be old enough to search her own name online. I didn't want the worst week of all our lives to be the first thing she found. I don't want to win the internet, I told Marcy. I want my daughter to be safe, and I want to be able to look at myself. Those are the only 2 things. I built a folder. I numbered everything inside so I wouldn't fumble. The original registration form, the portal access log, my hospital badge record, 712 in 1147 still on shift, Evelyn Cross's written statement about her stolen seal, the 2 signatures side by side, mine drawn and Damon's real, the residence change form dated March 12th, and on top, so I would see it every time I opened it, the photograph Solange had sent me 6 days earlier, a small bedroom in her house, a white bed, a shelf, and on the wall a wooden name sign that read Cleo. Not Cleo Frey, not Cleo Carver, just Cleo. As if my surname had never existed. I made 3 copies. 1 on paper in the folder I kept with me, 1 in the cloud, 1 emailed to my family lawyer as a formal record, the moment I hit send. I was not walking into that house, holding the only copy of anything. They were all there when I arrived. My mother at the stove, my father at the head of the table, Solange and Damon. And at the far end, slightly uncertain, Damon's mother Norma, who had always been kinder to me than my own blood, and who clearly hadn't been told the full reason she'd been invited. A blank form and a pen sat at my place on the table like a plate. Solange opened the door with the pen already in her hand. "Come in," she said. "Let's just sort this out and have dinner." I came in. I set the folder on the table. I did not pick up the pen. "Before I sign anything," I said, "I need to show you something." My father exhaled the way a man does when he is exercising enormous patience with a difficult child. "Lacey." "Just this first," I said. I laid the original registration form flat on the table. "This is what I submitted when I enrolled Cleo in September. 1 legal guardian. My name. Solange's name is not in it. It has never been in it. So when the emergency pickup card suddenly had her name where mine used to be, someone changed the card without changing the truth. The school made an administrative error," Solange said. "Easy, rehearsed." I set the portal log beside it. Then my hospital badge record. The school didn't make an error. My parent portal account was accessed from an unrecognized device at 11:47 at night. I placed the pages side by side, and here is my badge record from that same night. I scanned into the ER at 7:12. I was on the floor at 11:47. I cannot log into a school portal from a device I've never used while I'm on shift in Kingston at the same time. The room's temperature shifted. My mother turned from the stove slowly and looked at my sister. Shalane, she said. You told me you were just updating her contact information. I was helping, Solange said. Her voice moved slightly faster than she wanted it to. I set down Evelyn Cross's written statement. The affidavit has a notary seal on it. The notary is a woman named Evelyn Cross. She has never met me. She never notarized this document. The commission number on that stamp is 2 years out of date. She will say so to anyone who asks. I looked at my sister. You didn't change a contact card. You forged a public official's seal. Damon had not spoken yet. He was about to have a reason to. I placed the last 2 pages on the table and turned them, so everyone at the table could read them. There are 2 signatures on the form that would move Cleo out of my home. This one, I pointed to the first line, is supposed to be mine. It's a forgery. It was drawn, not signed. I moved my finger to the second line. This one is Damon's, and it's real. The table went still. He signed it. No one forced his hand. My name was fabricated onto that form. His was not. He signed a document intended to remove his daughter from her mother's home, and then stood in that school office and let me be told at the front desk that I wasn't her parent anymore. Norma pushed her chair back so fast it scraped the floor. She looked at her son the way you look at a stranger wearing a face you raised. Damon, what did you do? It was not a question. He didn't answer. He looked at the table. He looked at his mother. He looked at nothing. When he finally spoke, it was worse than the silence. I'm her father, he said quietly, as if that settled everything. I have rights. You have joint legal custody, I said. That means we make decisions together. It does not mean you sign a relocation order and allow my name to be forged beside yours. If you wanted more time with Cleo, there was a legal path. A lawyer, a mediator, a conversation with me. You chose this instead because a family court judge might not have given you what you wanted, and a forged transfer would have handed it to you before anyone could object. Norma set her hand flat on the table, staring at her son. I raised you better than this. He didn't answer her either. Solange tried to take the room back. You're twisting everything. I love that little girl. I know you do, I said. And I meant it. That's the part I can't get past. You love her and you still tried to take her, because for you, those have always been the same motion. I turned to my parents then, and I softened, because this part I had thought hardest about. You gave Solange my schedule, I said. You told the school I was struggling. You handed her the fact that I'm in therapy like it was evidence of something. That was wrong, and I will carry the weight of it for a long time. I paused. But you didn't forge my signature. You didn't copy that seal. You didn't sign that form. She let you believe you were protecting your granddaughter while she built something criminal underneath you. She used your worry as cover. She used you too. My father's face had gone the color of old paper. He looked at Solange the way you look at someone wearing a face you used to know. You told me, he said, slow and quiet, you were only helping with paperwork. My mother had a hand pressed over her mouth. She was doing the arithmetic I had done a week earlier, arriving at the same answer I had arrived at, and hating every step of it. I put down the last page, the residence change form dated March 12th, and beside it the photograph. This was set to take effect 2 days before your wedding, I said. A transfer to a school 40 minutes from here, a room with her name already on the wall. I let them look at the nameplate in the photo. You were not picking her up for a visit. You were relocating her so that by the time anyone stood in front of a family court judge, it would already look normal. She was the piece you moved to make the lie true. Solange's composure left her entirely. If you were a better mother, she said, you wouldn't need a therapist in the first place. The room went silent the way a room does when something true and terrible has finally been said out loud by the wrong person. Because there it was. Not concern for Cleo, not love. Just that, the oldest wound she had ever given me, finally spoken as the reason she believed she deserved my daughter. I did not shout. I gathered my pages one by one, back into the folder, and I answered in the steadiest voice I have ever used. I am in therapy because of what you and Damon did to this family. You broke something, and then you pointed at the fact that I was working to fix it and called it proof that I was broken. I am Cleo's mother. Everything I have, every shift I worked, every form I filed, every morning I showed up is on the record. And from now on, how any of you are in my daughter's life is going to be my decision. I stood. My father said my name once, quietly. My mother was crying without sound. The police already have their copies, I said at the door. This stopped being a family conversation the day someone drew my name onto a form. And then I drove home to my daughter. Marcy was waiting at my door. She took one look at my face and didn't ask anything. She could already see it. It was done. The wedding did not happen on March 14th. I did not stop it. The truth did. You cannot stand two people up in front of a room and call them a stable family the week one of them is under active investigation for forging documents to take a child, and the other's own mother has seen what he signed. Norma canceled the venue herself. I heard about it secondhand, and I felt nothing I expected to feel. Only a tired, quiet kind of stillness. The school corrected Cleo's records and locked her file. No changes could be made without me present, in person, with identification. My portal account was secured and flagged for any new login attempt. Solange was barred from the school property pending the investigation. The transfer application was voided before it ever processed. Damon's access to Cleo became supervised. A man who signs a relocation order behind the mother's back does not get handed unsupervised weekends as though nothing happened. March 12th came and went. Cleo woke up in her own room, in our own apartment, and found a post-it note on the bathroom mirror. I had drawn a small rabbit, Remy, with his one missing button eye, and written, "Today is going to be a good one. Love, Mum." She brought it to the breakfast table and set it beside her cereal bowl to look at while she ate. My mother came to my door about 2 weeks later, with no agenda and nothing in her hands but an apology. She stood in the hallway and said she had believed the easier story because it was easier than believing what her own daughter was capable of, and that she was ashamed and that she understood if I needed time. "I'm not cutting you out," I told her, "but I'm not going to let anyone rewrite what I am to Cleo ever again. If you want to be in her life, it starts with the truth." She said she understood. Time will tell whether she does. I kept seeing Dr. Sharma. If anything, I go more steadily now, not because I fell apart, but because I proved to myself that keeping that appointment is not a weakness anyone gets to hold over me. About a month after everything settled, I had a day off and walked Cleo to school, rather than putting her on the bus, because she liked it when I did. She stopped in front of the front office window and pointed at the pickup card mounted inside the glass. She is learning to read, and she will practice on anything with letters. "L," she said, "ACEY. She looked up at me, proud of herself. "That's you, that's my mum." "That's me," I said. Just my name on one clean line, nothing clipped to the back. No borrowed seal, no drawn signature, no secondary document that would make a careful man reach for a phone. Just a single line in the space where a single line belongs. People can forge a signature. Solange proved that. They can copy a seal and edit a file at midnight, and stand in a school office and say the words loudly to a room full of witnesses. There is a great deal they can counterfeit. But no one can fake being there. No one drew my hand onto 2 years of post-it notes on a bathroom mirror, or badged into a hospital at 7:12 so strangers could be cared for through the night, or learned which flavor of juice Cleo prefers from a glass. You cannot manufacture the mornings. I was there for every one of them. That is the document that cannot be altered. If you take anything from this, take the unglamorous things. Know exactly who is authorized to collect your child, and verify it more than once. Protect your school portal password, the way you protect anything that matters. Keep your own copies of every document that connects you to your children. Photograph them. Save them to the cloud. Put them somewhere a locked drawer can't reach. And if someone ever tries to use your job, or your honesty, or the fact that you asked for help, as proof that you are not enough, trust your own record. Go find the people whose job it is to see the truth, and let them carry what is theirs to carry. I'm Lacey Carver. I work 12-hour ER shifts, I'm in therapy, and I am Cleo's mum. All three of those things are true at the same time, and only one of them was ever anyone else's business. Thank you for staying with this to the end. If it meant something to you, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.